The parol evidence rule keeps extrinsic evidence out of court if contracting parties have reduced their negotiations to a final integrated agreement. In Baker v. Bailey, the parties had a preliminary understanding that didn't make its way into their contract. Can the court enforce it? Arthur and Elma Bailey moved their mobile home onto land owned by their daughter, next to her home. The Baileys extended water service from their daughter's well to the mobile home. 6 years later, the Baileys' daughter sold her home and most of the surrounding acreage to Grant and Norma Baker. The Baileys retained a 1-acre plot surrounding the mobile home. As part of the sale, the daughter wanted to ensure that the Baileys kept water access. In preliminary discussions, Norma Baker shared her fear that the Bailey property could end up in the hands of, quote, a bunch of hippies, unquote. So she didn't want the water rights to be freely transferable to any purchaser. However, the Bakers were willing to share water rights with a reasonable subsequent purchaser. The parties signed a water rights agreement that didn't reflect this understanding. The agreement granted use of the well only to the Baileys. If the Baileys ceased occupying the land, the agreement would terminate. The agreement also gave the Bakers a right of first refusal on the Bailey property and specified that the parties would share the well's costs. Finally, the agreement stated that the parties intended to, quote, fully set forth their understanding, unquote, concerning water rights on their tracts. 2 years later, the Baileys decided to move. With water rights, the Bailey property could be sold for $47,500. Without water rights, it was worth merely $8,000. The Bakers declined to extend water rights to a new occupant. The Baileys located a purchaser. The Bakers exercised their right of first refusal, acquiring the property for $8,000. The Bakers sued the Baileys, claiming they failed to pay half of the well expenses. The Baileys counterclaimed for breach of the water rights agreement and the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. The trial court granted the Bakers less than one-half of the well expenses and held that the Bakers had breached the water rights agreement and the implied covenant of good faith. The Bakers appealed to the Montana Supreme Court.